threat from terrorism is real, but we will overcome it. We will destroy ISIL and any other organization that tries to harm us. Our success won't depend on tough talk or abandoning our values or giving in to fear. That's what groups like ISIL are hoping for. Instead, we will prevail by being strong and smart, resilient and relentless, and by drawing upon every aspect of American power.
When the President of the United States calls for primetime air on the TV networks, he or she gets it without question, because everyone knows the words will carry great weight and could be a change of course for the government. All of which was true until Barack Obama took the pulpit Sunday night and left people demanding those 20 minutes back onto their life clock immediately, if not sooner. Because a greater waste of political time hasn't been witnessed since someone came up with the grand idea of seeking to have intelligent political discussions on Facebook. We shall not waste a moment. Let's bring forth the political animal for this Monday. Welcoming back the former Deputy Assistant to the Vice President, Dick Cheney, and contributor at the Daily Beast, Ron Christie. Joined by the former Democratic senatorial aide and current contributor at The Hill, Brent Budowsky. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us. We got an awful lot to cover. Brent, I'm going to begin with you first and foremost here because the president spoke on Sunday night. Come on, Brent, even you have to admit this was nothing. This was a vacuum speech that just filled airspace. What did the man say that was important?
Oh, I don't have to admit it. I'll proudly state it. I thought his speech was weak and even ridiculous. I have long called for a minimum of 20,000 special operations troops to kill ISIS in the real world, 3,000 Americans, and half of them, of the remaining, be Muslim from Sunni countries. So I thought his speech was a waste of the nation's time. I also believe that what Donald Trump has said today is even more reprehensible and hurtful to American interests than anything else that he's done, and that's saying a lot. I think Ted Cruz's extremism and shouting is also destructive. I think our political dialogue right now has reached a gutter level at a moment when there's a real threat to America that we have to deal with on a bipartisan basis, but much tougher, much more specific, and much more aggressive than anything the president said in his public relations event last night at the Oval Office.
Talk about a perfect segue. All right, Ron Christie, I'm going to come to you right now because let's talk about what Donald Trump said today. He is calling for all Muslim immigration to the United States to end, a total and complete shutdown until elected leaders, meaning, of course, the president, can figure out what's going on. Your immediate reaction?
Well, my immediate reaction, Ed, is that it sounds xenophobic. I think that the United States has had a long history of welcoming people of all faiths to this country, and the Statue of Liberty and our beacon of freedom is exactly what this country is about. Now, if you want to have a ban on immigrants from Syria, we might have that discussion. Or if they're in a particularly dangerous region of the world, say, oh, I don't know, maybe the Arabian Peninsula, we can have that discussion. But to say all Muslims from all countries should be banned shows that this guy's not ready for prime time.
All right, so let me ask you this then, Ron. Looking at Donald Trump, he still leads the polls by a tremendous amount in some places, though we are going to talk about Iowa and New Hampshire in just a moment. But he does still lead the polls. There are those people now who feel that he's inevitable for the Republican nomination. I know you don't agree with that. You believe that this still has a long way to go.
Still a long way to go. And I think what Mr. Trump does is he actually gives a voice to millions of Americans who say those knuckleheads in Washington, D.C. aren't listening to us. They don't care about us. And finally, even though he's brash and he's obnoxious, we have someone who actually means what he says and says what he means. I don't have to agree with what he says, but I think he does give voice to power of, I'm going to be straightforward and I'm going to be honest with you in my conversations. And I think that's why so many people continue to flock to him.
Brent, let me come to you and look at the other side here as the polls I just alluded to. The polls now show Ted Cruz leading in Iowa. It's the first time actually that he has led in a lot of these different cycles, if you will. He's got a lead over Trump, and Marco Rubio is looking very good in New Hampshire. He's making up some ground. Do you think that this is the quiet beginning then for Cruz and Rubio to overtake Trump?
Oh, yes. And in particular, I think Marco Rubio, who I regard as the most serious Republican presidential candidate of all of them. And I've written about that long ago. Iowa is not representative on the Republican side of the National Republican Party. Rick Santorum won it last time. I love him, bless them all, but that's not really representative. But if you look at the polls, Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders defeat Donald Trump, usually by landslide margins. Donald Trump is losing to the socialist from Vermont by a landslide margin. They're beating Ted Cruz by a significant margin. I don't think the Republicans are that suicidal in the end to nominate one of them. Now, I'll let Ron deal with his Republican friends on that. I've got enough trouble on the Democratic side. But I think the man to watch is Marco Rubio. And I want to emphasize real quick and real important. What Donald Trump and Ted Cruz say about Muslims and Islam is violently opposed by almost the entire upper echelon of the CIA, by the Joint Chiefs of Staff, by the Special Operations Commanders, by the Mossad, by the British intelligence, MI5 and MI6. What they're saying about Muslims, I agree with your last guest, even though she's a Republican, is a defamation against Muslims, but equally bad. It hurts America. It hurts American interests. It hurts our ability to destroy ISIS. And I have enough confidence, even in Republicans and certainly the American people, that we are early in the game. And as this debate unfolds, they're going to go the way of Herman Cain.
All right, I only got 30 seconds left. Ron, Christie, then let me throw it back to you again. Cruz and Rubio, who now is, in your opinion, on the track to overtake Donald Trump if it can be done?
Well, I think they both are. I think if you look at New Hampshire, Rubio is really making up some good ground in New Hampshire. I think ultimately he has the broader appeal across the United States. I think Brent's exactly right. Iowa has consistently gone to a more conservative group, while Cruz might be gaining ground there. I don't know whether that holds traction across the United States. Look, Marco Rubio is looking like the real deal right now, and I'll say this. John Kasich, my former boss, and Marco Rubio would be a formidable ticket if you got the senator from Florida and you got the governor from Ohio. Be something to watch.
Donald Trump followers will look you guys right in the eye and say, you're wrong. But then again, we got time. Ron, Christie, Brent Budowsky, gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for joining us. President Obama and bait and switch. Ron Paul talks about that next on The Hard Line.